Well, it is now official. Dallas Eakins is out as the coach of the Anaheim Ducks. We'll talk all about that on this edition of Locked On Anaheim Ducks.
Your Locked On Ducks, your daily podcast on the Anaheim Ducks, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Welcome to Locked On Anaheim Ducks, part of the Locked On Podcast Network. I'm your host, Jason J.D. Hernandez. Been covering hockey for over a decade. Thank you for making this your first listen of the day. And don't forget, this podcast is wherever you get your podcasts, including YouTube, and ad-free on Amazon Music. So check it out there. All right, we got a big story to talk about, and this is going to dominate the summer for the Ducks. Dallas Eakins is officially out as the coach of the Anaheim Ducks. The writing was on the wall. We saw this coming a long time ago. In fact, a lot of people thought he was going to get the axe last season. A lot of people thought he was going to get fired, during the season. In fact, I thought he would get fired after that long double-digit losing streak last season. It didn't happen. And I thought for some reason he might get the axe earlier this season, but he managed to survive to the end of his contract. So I'll give credit where credit's due. He stuck around. He saw this process through, and he fulfilled, however you want to define fulfilled, he fulfilled his contract. And now we can look at a new era of Ducks hockey, but we need to look back on the Dallas Eakins era because, that's what we do here. So looking back, how do you define the last 4 years of Dallas Eakins? I define it not as a complete and utter failure, but I would say more of a disappointment, because Dallas Eakins had a terrific track record with the San Diego Gulls, leading them to the Western Conference Finals back in 2019, having that big win against the Ontario Reign back in 2017, leading them to the second round in 2016 as well. Dallas Eakins was a great coach in San Diego, and he was beloved down there. And not only that, they were successful. Those were rockin' crowds. He helped lead a culture down there for 4 strong seasons. And once he took the Gulls to the Western Conference Final back in 2019, that's when the Ducks decided, you know what? That's good enough. Obviously, you've done a good job in San Diego. You relate well with the guys. You know what you're doing. And you're going to have some of those same guys up in Anaheim. So it seemed at the time to be a natural fit for Dallas Eakins to coach for the Anaheim Ducks. Now, this wasn't without red flags, because his previous tenure in Edmonton did not go well. He went 36, 63, and 14 with the Edmonton Oilers. Not a good record at all. However, because of that poor 2015 season, Edmonton did get the number 1 draft pick in the 2015 draft, which landed them Connor McDavid. So now we could have another Connor after a poor Dallas Eakins season. His tenure with the Anaheim Ducks: 100, 147, and 44. Good enough for a points percentage of only .419. So unfortunately, a losing record for Dallas Eakins. He managed 100 wins in 291 games. Not a good record, and I was hopeful that the Ducks would get more wins this season. I was hopeful that the Ducks would even at least compete for a playoff spot this season, and sadly, that just did not happen. So to go through just some of the things over the past few years, oh boy, this tenure was without its controversy, so to speak. There was the controversy with Trevor Zegras getting benched on his first game in Arizona. Then benching Trevor Zegras again and again. And then benching some of the other guys too. He benched Mason McTavish, for crying out loud. The lineups he put out there were confusing at best. So it's really hard. I mean, it's easy to describe the Dallas Eakins era if you want to take the easy way out. I'm not going to do that. I'm going to be forthright and saying that Dallas Eakins was dealt a bad hand. But with the pieces he had, I feel like he could have gotten so much more out of his teams the past 4 seasons. And I think that's the disappointing thing about it, is because he didn't do that in San Diego. San Diego, he knew what he had. He knew the lines to put out there, and he did a great job in the American Hockey League level. So I think that's what makes it a little bit sad for me, is to see how much hope there was given his prior 4 years and then the following 4 years in Anaheim. But, that happens sometimes. Sometimes there are coaches that do a great job in the American League, but it just does not translate to the NHL. And Dallas Eakins, unfortunately, I think is going to be the latest example of that, as another coach who does great in the minors, but it doesn't, translates to the National Hockey League. Now, there are some coaches that do well in juniors and do well in the American Hockey League, and it relates well to the National Hockey League. And I'm going to look at the example that I like to use the most as far as that's concerned is the current head coach of the Colorado Avalanche, and that would be Jared Bednar. Jared Bednar did supremely well with the Lake Erie Monsters, leading them to the Calder Cup. And at the time, it was a bit of a reach for Colorado to get Jared Bednar. But it worked out wonderfully. Never mind that Colorado was going through the same thing. They were also going through a rebuilding process. And they also got top draft picks. And look where they are now. They just won the Central Division again. They're going to have a top seed in this year's NHL playoffs. And they are the defending Stanley Cup champion. So sometimes it works. Sometimes. But not all the time. So that's going to be, I guess, the definition of the Dallas Eakins era. But it has now come to a close. We can close the book on Dallas Eakins as the Anaheim Ducks coach. And we'll talk more about the release and, some of the words he had to say. We'll talk about that more, after the first intermission. So we'll talk about that and also talk about what can be coming for the future of the Ducks. Stay locked in. But first, I want to talk to you guys about eBay Motors. Now, for a championship team like the Avs, it's all about making sure every player is a perfect fit. It's the same when it comes to your vehicle. Every part needs to fit just right. So the next time you need parts and accessories, head to eBay Motors. With eBay Guaranteed Fit, you can be sure every part you need fits right the first time around. Just add your ride to My Garage and look for the green check to know the part will fit or your money back. Because just like in sports, confidence is the name of the game when you shop on eBay Motors. And with over 122 million parts to choose from, you'll be back in the game in no time. After all, it's easy to bring home a win when the right parts are guaranteed. Get the right parts, the right fit, and the right prices on ebaymotors.com. Let's ride. Eligible items only. Exclusions apply. Welcome back to Locked On Anaheim Ducks, part of the Locked On Podcast Network. Once again, you're locked in with JD Hernandez on this special edition of Locked On Ducks, because the breaking news is that Dallas Eakins is out as the coach of the Ducks. So here is the press release from the Anaheim Ducks. Quote, "The Ducks announced today that they will not renew the contract of head coach Dallas Eakins. Eakins recently completed his 4th season as head coach of the Ducks and 8th with the organization, serving as head coach of the San Diego Gulls in the AHL from 2015 to 2019. Here's a quote from Ducks owner Henry Samueli. Quote, "We thank Dallas for his 8 years with the organization as head coach of both the Ducks and the Gulls. Susan and I are especially proud of his commitment to the community in both Anaheim and San Diego, which included countless charitable initiatives. We know Dallas will succeed in his future endeavors as character people often do. End quote. Here's a quote from GM Pat Verbeek. Quote, "This was a very difficult decision, one that comes after careful and considerable deliberation. At the end of the day, I simply feel that a fresh perspective and new voice will be beneficial for the team. Dallas has handled himself with class and character through a difficult season, and we wish him the best in the future." End quote. And a couple more things from the GM, Pat Verbeek, because he did have a press conference that was on the Ducks stream, and I made sure to listen to that. You know, he said that he would ideally like to hire a new head coach before the NHL draft, which is fair. You have the draft lottery coming up in about 3 weeks. Then you have the draft a month and a half after that. That's what Ducks fans have to look forward to. But then I heard this quote during the press conference on his evaluation of the team, and he said, quote, "I expected our team to compete harder. It's not the standard I wanted." Ooh, okay. Yeah, definitely. I think Pat Verbeek thought that the Ducks were going to improve this season as well. He saw the first half of what happened with the Ducks last season and was hoping that would be replicated this season. Unfortunately, that did not happen, and the Ducks wound up with the worst record in the league. So I get why he's disappointed, as we all are, because we were at least hopeful something would happen, and it did not. Now, here's Dallas Eakins. He posted this online, and I'm going to quote it directly from Dallas. Quote, "I will be forever grateful for my 8 years in the Ducks organization. From jumpstarting San Diego to dealing with COVID to a full-on rebuild was an inspiring and rewarding challenge. Every staff member and player made me a better coach, but more importantly, a better person. The enthusiasm and patience of the fans will never be forgotten. Thank you to Bob Murray and Pat Verbeek for giving me a chance. I will always be in your debt. Thank you to Henry, Susan, and Jillian Samueli for the inspiration. Your leadership makes the Ducks organization an incredible place to work. You remind us all that community and others come first. But most of all, thank you to my 3 wonderful ladies at home who support me like no other. I look forward to our next great adventure." End quote. Very, very kind words from Dallas Eakins. And for what it's worth, Dallas Eakins has always had a way with great words. He knows how to construct his thoughts and just make it okay. I've said in the past that I really respect Dallas Eakins as a person and one of the good guys off the ice. The moment for me that I'll remember, not as a Ducks coach, but as a goals coach, was when we had the Humboldt Broncos tragedy years ago. And Dallas Eakins brought down Coach Mike Stuthers, at the time Stutz, coaching the Ontario Reign, bitter rivals, and he brought over Stutz and said, "We've got to show solidarity, we got to do something." And they brought every single Reign and goals player, lined them up on the center faceoff circle, and paired off alternating teams. That's still one of my favorite moments. It really is. And that was a time where I just gained so much more respect for Coach Dallas Eakins. So from the humanistic side, it's going to be sad to see him go. But, you know, that's the business. That's how it is. Oh, so yeah. It's hard. It is hard on the personal side because of the kind of person that he is. And I wish nothing for the best of him for the future. And you know what? There could be a lot of AHL job vacancies out there coming up pretty soon. I wouldn't be surprised if Dallas Eakins at least gets another shot in the American Hockey League sooner rather than later. But I think whoever plucks him up is going to get someone of great character. And you know what? He deserves it. One final thought before we head off. So I talked about, what he's meant, but I got to talk about the future of the Ducks. It is wide open right now. There is going to be a slew of coaches that are going to be salivating to take this job. And it's got to be names, and it's got to be someone that's going to do well with the youth. And I think that's going to be paramount in the Ducks' search for a head coach, is someone that can relate to the youth. And there's already been some names lobbied out there that could be the next coach of the Anaheim Ducks. I know one that I kind of like here, and even though I have him tabbed as possibly being the next coach for the San Diego Gulls, I like Matt McIlvaine a lot. But all indications that I've heard so far is that he's going to be looked at very strongly to coach the San Diego Gulls. Now, I've mentioned Matt McIlvaine on a recent Gulls podcast where he's only 37 years old, coaches in Sweden, and is very big on analytics, but is also someone that can relate very well to the young guys. So would he be a better fit in Anaheim or a better fit in San Diego? I wouldn't mind if he at least gets interviewed for the Ducks job. Or maybe go with me on this, there could be an audition of sorts. I know it didn't work out last time the Ducks did this, when they brought on Joel Bouchard to have an audition to coach the Gulls. That did not work out. But maybe that's what you have to do in this case. Maybe you have to bring in a young guy, audition, coach a couple years in San Diego, who are also going to be very good next year, and see where it goes. But I'm sure there's going to be a ton of coaches, once we figure out where the Ducks land in the draft. If they do get that number one pick, then I think the quality of coaches that GM Pat Verbeek could go after would be astronomically better than if they got, say, the number 3 pick. Even if it's number 2, I think that'd be fine. But 1 or 2, especially number 1, if the Ducks get it, oh boy, you're going to hear a bunch of coaches just, go ahead, knocking on the door. Excuse me, is the Ducks vacancy still there? Yes, it is. Well, I would like to apply for the position of Anaheim Ducks head coach. All right, what are your credentials? Yeah, sure, why not? I mean, there's going to be a ton of coaches with varying degrees of experience. And, I haven't even come up with names yet. I'm probably going to have to actually do a little bit of research on this one, actually a lot of research, and come up with a few names that I think could be at least decent choices to be the next Ducks head coach. I mean, one name that I'm sure will not be on that list, and he'd better not be on this list. This is kind of the joking side of this now, but Torts would never coach this team. Yeah, right. No, it's got to be someone young. Someone in the same vein of a Jared Bednar. So where are the Ducks going to find someone like that? It could be in the American Hockey League level. It could be that level right now. You never know. So again, I'll do a little bit more research on that, and that'll be on an upcoming episode. But in the meantime, I think that's going to do it for this particular podcast, because it is the weekend and y'all should enjoy yourselves. I've got baseball this weekend, got hockey stuff. So, it's still going to be busy. And, hopefully I get a bit of a break, because frankly, you can probably hear it in my voice. Yeah, I've been working a lot. But we'll be back next Monday to completely break down this past season. And folks, it's gonna be ugly. Really ugly. Ugh. Just be prepared for that. All right. Thank you all for watching. Thank you all for listening. Don't forget, this podcast is free and available across all platforms, including Stitcher, Spotify, Odyssey, Apple Podcast, Google Podcast, ad-free on Amazon Music, Amazon Plus, and also on the YouTube. So make sure to hit that bell. Yeah! You could follow me on Twitter at StimpyJD. The show's Twitter's at LO_Ducks. And it's a busy night tonight in hockey for me because it is a big night in the American Hockey League. We'll see if I get a break. Coachella Valley could still get the number 1 seed. So, we'll see about that. So, big night in hockey. And the playoffs also begin on Monday. So, yeah. We'll have some rooting interests as well. You could drop me a line. Email is lockedonanaheimducks@gmail.com. And I think next week I'm going to open up the mailbox again because it's been a long time since I've done it. So I think some point next week I'll put out a tweet, take your questions, and see what you guys want to ask. So yeah, once again, thank you all for your continued support. It is greatly appreciated. For Locked On Anaheim Ducks, I'm Jason J.D. Hernandez saying have a great rest of the weekend. Please remember to be safe out there, be kind to one another, and Ducks fly together.